Hey, my research project consists of human resources, finding and keeping the best employees. Human resources, people think of them as being this scary place because of what they hear that they terminate. It's not always the case. Human resources are in favor of employees and, of course, in the best interest of the company. But they are appointed to many tasks, such as updating company policies, working on some payroll procedures, disciplinary actions, and their main focus, recruiting employees. Now, how do they do that? Human resources is has a variety of procedures that they have to go through. It's this hiring and finding and keeping an employee is pretty extensive, but they start by screening applicants. Secondly, they interview and evaluate. They set up orientation and training, and they go over an appraisal process with the employee, with the candidate. I'm sorry. Once a candidate or an applicant, of course, applies to the company, HR receives them through either internal or external. Internal applicants are applicants within the company that apply for a position, and then that gets seen through HR. Same thing through external applicants. External applicants, the difference is that they apply through either social media like LinkedIn or Indeed, or the actual company website, career website. But at the end of the day, they all get distributed through the from HR to the department, to the supervisor or manager department for their review. Now, some companies, for internal applicants, some companies do consider them as first priority because it might save some money. It does save some money for the company, due to they can pay lower wages to the employee, or it's less money to recruit an external than an internal applicant. So not all companies, but some companies do consider them as first priority, and that is said by a HR generalist that I interviewed. Her name is Dawn Lugo. Now, once a supervisor receives the application through the HR department, they do an extensive evaluation analysis. They look over cover letters and resume. And through the resume, they break it down and they look at each point. They look at the employee's education, they look at the skills, qualifications, experiences, of course, compensation. And they really do this quick analysis to see if does this resume actually fit the criteria of the supervisor. Allow now moving to the next step of interviewing. Once they've determined that this candidate is the right so far fit for the position, they move on to an to the interview part, where they relate that information to HR. HR then contacts this candidate, so that candidate can now come in for an interview. During the interview process, the candidate is being evaluated based on proper grooming, how well if they're dressed properly, and once during the interview where HR or the supervisor and manager is involved with the candidate during the interview process, the questions that are being asked is to evaluate how effectively the candidate is communicating. How well are they expressing themselves, and how well are they answering the questions? So once this the either both the either supervisor, manager, or HR, they're evaluating, looking, and listening to the candidate. They're also evaluating pretty much everything about this candidate. There's companies that also give competency tests. Not everybody does, but it's just to base on the test is just to base it to see how skilled is this candidate for that certain position that they're applying for. Not all companies do that, but it just depends on the job the job position that the candidate is also applying. So once the interview is pretty much done with, now the supervisor or manager of the department says, hey, you know what? I like this candidate. I want to hire them based on their answers, based on the interview, based on the resume and cover letter and everything. I want to hire them. Now, HR says, hey, wait, sounds great. So we're a step away, but now we got to do our process. HR now must investigate references, the references that were given to them through the resume. They have to check candidates' background, work history. Did they say they worked at that place that they said they did? Their credit history, driving record, depending on the position that they're applying for, and even social media gets looked into. So once all this gets investigated and comes back clear, now we're ready to hire the employee. Now, employee. So once that's done, we want to hire the employee. HR now relates, not only relates, but they contact the person, the now employee or candidate, to offer the position. Once they offer the position, and of course the candidate accepts, they become an employee. Now they are scheduled for an orientation. During the orientation process, a handbook, company handbook, is given to them during the orientation process, where it has all this extensive information, including company policies, procedures, rules, and regulations. Like some of the policies that these handbooks consist of are information about harassment, information about code of ethics, information about appraisals, information about pretty much break time, attendance, expectations of the general company is all in this handbook for the employee to review when they get a chance, or even review most of the information that's in there. During the orientation, also paperwork are being taken away? Not taken away, but paperwork are also being given. As far as like W-2, they want the employees to fill now the W-2 forms, or any acknowledgement or any agreements that are given to them. HR gives these forms to the employees for them to fill out, and then they of course take it back, or they the employee now gives it back to HR so they can file it accordingly. And some companies do have where supervisory managers or upper management comes in and meets the new hire, if applicable. Not every company does that. I know that the one of the other generalists, HR generalists that I interview, her name is Kathy Lacamba, also states that within her company, the CEO, the CFO, managers, supervisors do come and try to meet, and based on their schedule, of course, they try to come and meet that now new hire employee. Training pretty much is up to, depending on the company. Training is either within the company, online, off the job, meaning out in another external building, or it's it's vestibule, which means that it's a classroom setting where the employee's going to learn how to pretty much they're going to be trained in a classroom setting with the same equipment that they will be using once they start their actual job. So all this training depends on the supervisor and managers. And according to, again, Ms. Kathy Lacamba, HR generalist, she states that it depends on the company. Within her company, they do training within the company, and it is up to the supervisor to give that training. Once the employee has gone through all those steps, now the employee is being evaluated during a 90-day period, where the manager supervisor meets with the employee and speaks about expectations, how they shouldn't be late, how they shouldn't be calling off, how they should be addressing all the points as far as their job functions, and how they should be following the job functions within now their current job. So all of those expectations are being given to the employee, where they now agree to what they have to do. Once the 90-day evaluation period is done, now it goes to a 90-day review period. I'm sorry, not 90-day review, but they review the 90-day period of the employee to see if did they meet expectations? Did they not meet expectations? Did they follow what they were supposed to do? Didn't they follow what they were supposed to do? So pretty much that review period is where they evaluate again the employee. Should we keep them? Should we remove them? Or should we now fire them. So if the employee does do a good job, of course, most companies keep the employee, and at times they even give them a promotion, depending how well they do their job. And then if the employee doesn't do, fails to, what is it, to do their expectations, to actually during their 90-day period, they didn't do very well. So now it's up to the supervisor and manager to make the decision. Well, at this time, either do we keep them, do we put them in a different department, or do we now terminate the employee? Once all that gets arranged, HR still gets the message whether we keep the employee or not. Regardless of the outcome, HR is delivered this information so they can properly document this within the employee's information or within the charts or files. Once that all gets situated, how do we know when to keep the best employee? How do we find and keep them? As you already heard, HR department has to go through a series of steps to determine which is the best employee and when should we keep the best employee. They have to screen applicants, they have to interview and evaluate the candidate, they have to set up orientation and trainings, and employees go through an identity appraisal process. So once that all gets done and fitted and done and squared away, we want to keep the employees, but how do we keep them? By setting priorities, by encouraging communication, by promoting positive behavior, honesty, and transparent with employee. So that way, that will help motivate and inspire them to stay and be the best that they can be for many years to come within your company. That's how we find and we keep them. And this is my presentation, my research project for today. And here's two of the references. Thank you.